Hey all, I hope you're doing well in the heat wave we're having in the East Coast at the moment. Got the aircon cranking, can't wait to see my power bill. Anyway, pretty mild here. We've had 38, 38, 38, 38. And just for fun, I think Wednesday is 44. So that'll be interesting. It cools down after that, gets to about 37. I've got a couple of things I need to fix on the Ranger. And about 2 months ago, I rebuilt my camper trailer. So I mentioned to show you that. But it's just too damn hot outside. It's insanely crazy. So inside we are. So I went back over that first vlog video that I did, and in there I mentioned about how my mum was a bit of a storyteller. I did say that I wanted to do a video on it. Well, here it is. It's not going to be super long, but I just wanted to go through some of the stories that mum used to tell, and by extension you'll get a bit of a picture of what it was like to sort of live in Sydney, right in the CBD in sort of the 30s and 40s. I've got some period pictures of where she grew up and things like that, current pictures and old ones, and I'll put all them up. So I hope you find it interesting. We'll get into it. Mum was born in 1935. She was born in a suburb of Sydney called Ultimo. I'm going to put some pictures and a couple of maps up so you know where I'm talking about, give you a bit of an idea. But just as an intro, it's sort of funny now. It's multi-million dollars worth of property. I mean, crazy money. It's just near the fish markets in Sydney, literally about 3 minutes away from the fish markets. And when Mum grew up, it was basically working class slums. All guys that worked, you know, labourers, tradesmen. My granddad, he was on the wharves, just working men. So there was nothing fancy about it, and now it's like, oh yeah, so I live in Ultimo, don't you know? Okay, so you can see there, in this first picture, I've just put a Google Maps picture up. You can see that red outline, that's basically the suburb of Ultimo. So you can see how close it is to like things like the wharves, the Circular Quay, Opera House, Harbour Bridge, all that sort of stuff. So that's where Mum spent the first 8 years of her life. That just gives you a bit of context. Okay, so this one is actually Mum's house. It's the house on the left of that picture. The address is 16 Mary Ann Street, Ultimo. I want you to pay particular attention to the cafe there on the right-hand side, the Fork and Grind. I'll mention that in a minute. So these are just a couple of historical pictures. The first one is May Street, Ultimo, and then the second one is Ultimo Street, Ultimo. And they're both from 1906. You can see there in one of the pictures, it looks like a bridge. Well, that's actually an open sewer with a sort of a dodgy bridge over the top of it. So yes, okay, these are a bit older. Obviously, my mum wasn't there in 1906, but it just gives you a bit of context. So this is a picture of the next suburb along, Piermont, in 1958. I couldn't find street scenes of Ultimo in the sort of 40s, 50s. So I've picked this one just to give you a bit of an idea of sort of how crappy the houses were. So this is a picture from the old Grace Brothers building, I think it's from, and it's looking over Harris Street. Now, the houses on the bottom right, that street is Kirk Street, and just note like how the backyards look, you know, pretty dodgy and all that sort of stuff. And this is the same street today. This is a Google Maps image from Street View. Now, have a look at this. You can sort of see that there's an alley behind Mary Ann Street. It's a bit hard to pick out in the image. But you may notice that if you walk around the older parts of Sydney, you can see all these alleyways behind houses and things like that, and you think, that's odd, why are they there? That's for someone called the Night Soil Man. Yes, the Night Soil Man, or more commonly known as the Dunny Man. So, in the 40s, none of these houses were connected to the sewers, and they didn't have indoor toilets. They had a thunderbox in the backyard. So the Night Soil Man would come around at night with his horse and cart. Here's a picture of the horse and cart. This is the only one I could find that was sort of Australian. This is actually from Brisbane, this picture. But it gives you an idea. Yes, it's a tin that you do your business in the thunderbox in the back garden. And then the man comes down with his horse and cart in the alley, opens up the back door to your back garden, takes out your one and replaces it with a fresh tin. And that happened every night. So in the morning you had a fresh tin in your thunderbox. Not the best job in the world. I hope they got danger money. Probably not, but anyway. So I told you to keep an eye on that cafe there, the Fork and Grind cafe in this picture. Well, when Mum was a child, that wasn't a cafe. That was what they call an SP bookmaker. So this was back in the days when betting off track was illegal. It flourished because there was so much police corruption anyway. So I mentioned that alleyway before. So when it got raided, the guys would just all pile out of there and run any way they could. One of the most convenient places for them to run was just down the alleyway. But what they do a lot of times is burst through the back garden. You know, there's a door there because the Night Soil Man needs to get in, and either jump the back fence or burst through the back door of the back garden and run through the house. Like literally Mum, Grandad and my grandmother would be sitting there like
was listening to the wireless or something, a guy would just run through the house in front of him out the front door, and the police would be behind him, and like the light bulb is swinging in the breeze from this guy just flying through the house, and the police run in, and just before the police get in there, Grandad used to say to Mum, "Don't say anything, you didn't see anything," like this. And the coppers would come in and they'd be like, "Did anybody come through?" And they're all like, "No, I didn't see a thing." And the light bulb is doing this, hanging from the ceiling. So I've got some interesting stories about my granddad and when he worked on the wharves. I'll throw a quick picture up. This is where he worked. This is a photo from about 98. It's when they started to knock it down for redevelopment into, once again, multi-million-dollar townhouses, and it was just crappy wharves, as you can see, ready to fall apart. Yeah, so Grandad would come home with these presents for Mum, like for her birthday and for Christmas and things like that. And he'd say to her, "Happy birthday, here's a new handbag." And it'd be like this Italian leather handbag. And then he'd say to her, "You have to put it under your bed for a month." So he's filched it from the docks for his daughter's birthday present. And she's like, you can't take it outside just yet. You have to wait a month for the heat to die down. He did this with everything: perfume, Italian tiles, Italian handbags. I mean, I'm talking French, like proper French perfume. I need to put a segue in here. Grandad was in the Wharfies Union. We're coming up to the end of the 40s. So this would be around 1946, 7, just after the war. So him and a couple of mates voted actually against what the union wanted. A couple of days after the vote, he got shirt-fronted at work by a couple of union enforcers. This is what led to moving out to Jannali. What they said to him was, "Vote the way we want you to vote, or there's going to be trouble. And you've got a young daughter at home, haven't you, Roy?" His name was Royston, so everybody called him Roy. "You've got a young daughter at home, haven't you, Roy?" This kind of implied threat that if you don't do what we tell you to do, or vote the way we want you to vote, you're going to be in a bit of trouble, and so's your family. And so anyway, that was it. Grandad was like, "Right, we're out of here." He still needs to work on the docks, obviously, on the wharves. But he goes, "Right, we're out of here." So he bought land out into the Sutherland Shire, out of Jannali. And that's what led me to be born there and grow up there. But so otherwise I would have been living in the middle of the CBD. Yeah, so 2 union enforcers forced my granddad to basically move away from Ultimo. But when he built the house, because he still worked on the wharves, he built the house at Jannali through sort of the early 50s. He built it himself, him and a few mates, and then he got electricians and plumbers in once the sort of structure was finished. He built, you're not going to believe this, he built hidey holes into the house. I'm not kidding you. There were little areas behind where he put a hole in the wall for the telephone to sit. But behind that was a built cubby, a little cupboard behind that. The big mirror in the bathroom, the back part of that was all cut out, and he built shelves in the wall cavity to hide stuff. And that's where he used to hide the perfume that he nicked from the wharves. And when we sold the house in 2016, I went through and I checked all these hidey holes. And when I removed the mirror off, this is how much perfume must have been in there. You could still smell the perfume in there, though. So that's how long he must have stored it in there. There must have been stuff in there for like years. And like our bathroom at Jannali had Italian tiles on the floor. And I'm talking like before us that it was a working class area. And it was just a wharfie, but there's these Italian tiles on the floor and there's a couple of Mum's Italian handbags in the cupboard, and all these hidey holes through the house. Well, that's what it was like for Mum growing up. A bit of fun and games, I suppose, surrounded by crime, drunks, corrupt police, and all those sorts of things. Very interesting. There's much more stories I could tell you, but I don't want it to be run long. I want to keep it short. But that's just a little taste. The whole crime thing, Mum used to talk about that all the time. There was always gangs running around and stuff like that, and, a lot of fights and things she used to see as a young girl. But it was just sort of, looking back at my granddad, it was just sort of do the best you can for your family, and if that means you've got to nick stuff off the walls, well, then go for it, if that helps you put food on the table or whatever. It's fun to look back. There's always a few skeletons hiding in your family's closet somewhere. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. It was a bit of fun to go back down memory lane for me and see all those old photos. Before Mum passed away, I was able to take her back and show her 16 Mary Ann Street where she was born. That's actually, I forgot to mention, that's actually the house she was born in as well. So thank you very much for watching, and remember as always, duty first.